On an ordinary night in New York, a young woman walks into a bar carrying nothing but a simple dress, a stack of overdue bills, and a heart worn out from trying. She has no idea that the steady, undeniable gaze of a stranger will change everything within a few hours. One night of impulsive surrender, a quiet escape at dawn, and the next day, a job interview that reveals the impossible. Because when she opens the door to the room, the CEO is him. If this story touches you, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening from? Your support keeps this space alive and allows us to keep bringing stories like this. The night felt heavier than usual, as if New York had taken a deep breath and forgotten to let it out. From the fogged-up window of her small Brooklyn apartment, Maya Chen watched the headlights reflecting on the wet pavement, each beam of light rushing by too fast, reminding her of everything slipping through her fingers. The cold floor beneath her bare feet seemed to pull her even further down, as if the entire city insisted on reminding her of what she was trying so hard to ignore. Her business administration diploma, earned through sleepless nights and partial scholarships, still leaned against the wall, unframed, without a home. She didn't have the courage to hang it up. It felt too cynical to display a symbol of a promising future in an apartment where rent was overdue and her bank account had already crossed into negative territory. 3 months. 3 months sending resumes to hundreds of companies. 3 months receiving polite, impersonal emails that always said the same thing. Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to move forward with another candidate. And as if the universe thought she still wasn't carrying enough weight, her mother called every day asking when her real life was going to start. Maya loved her mother, but that kind of question had the power to puncture whatever fragile confidence she had left. When her phone buzzed for the 3rd time that night, she already knew who it was. Harper, get up. We're going out. No arguments. Harper, I'm already on my way. Maya let out a tired sigh. Harper was like a hurricane, loud, intense, unstoppable. Minutes later, she burst into the apartment as if she were opening the door to her own home. For God's sake, Maya, Harper muttered, dropping her purse on the couch. You look like you got swallowed by an electric bill. Maya managed a weak laugh. I'm exhausted, Harper. Nothing is working out. Harper grabbed her shoulders with that firm look she always used whenever she refused to let her friend sink. I know, but you need to breathe. Just one night. One night to remember that you're not a rejection email. Before she could protest, Harper had already pulled her arm and opened the closet with the authority of someone who appointed herself commander-in-chief. Where's the black dress? It still fits, right? Maya rolled her eyes. Unfortunately. When the dark fabric hugged her body, she looked at herself in the mirror. The reflection showed a woman trying to look confident, but the truth was she was tired, not just inside, but in her soul. Mascara concealed some of the exhaustion. Foundation softened the red tint of frustration. It was all makeup, not just on her face, but in her entire posture. The subway ride to Manhattan was packed, carrying the smell of rain and rusted metal. Harper rambled about random things, work gossip, a new crush, an arrogant boss. Maya listened like someone clinging to any noise that might distract her own thoughts. Sometimes silence was more dangerous than sound. The bar, once they arrived, felt like a parallel universe. Golden lights reflected off the glass, music pulsing like a heartbeat. People dressed impeccably, lively conversations about successful careers and expensive trips. Everything inside her whispered that she didn't belong there. Harper, she murmured, gripping her friend's arm, I shouldn't be here. Yes, you should, Harper insisted, fixing her lipstick, and you're going to thank me later. Maya hid near the counter, ordering a cheap drink just to have something to hold. The feeling was familiar, being out of place, invisible, as if the world around her had a shine she could never quite reach. And then she felt it. A gaze. Not a casual glance, one that moved over her with intention, precision, and a strange kind of recognition. as if he had been waiting for her before she even walked in. She turned slowly, almost afraid to confirm what she sensed. And there he was, a man who looked like he had stepped out of a perfectly lit scene. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair slightly tousled, his shirt rolled at the sleeves, revealing veins and muscles that hinted more at strength than vanity. There was something in his eyes, depth, awareness, steadiness, that made her stomach drop. He didn't look away. He didn't pretend. He didn't hide. He simply watched her. A spark of electricity shot down Maya's spine. Harper noticed instantly. "Maya, who is that man staring at you like he's about to devour you?" I have no idea. But something in her knew that wasn't entirely true, because the feeling he stirred in her didn't belong to a stranger. It was as if she recognized that intensity, even without knowing why. Then he started walking toward them, not with arrogance, but with a quiet confidence that made space open around him. He looked out of place there, like he belonged somewhere larger, calmer, more powerful. "Maya," Harper whispered, "he's coming. He is actually coming." Maya froze and stayed frozen. She couldn't move, didn't want to. He stopped in front of them, his presence almost tangible. A subtle, warm scent drifted between them. "Hi," he said, his voice deep and calm, as if he had spoken to her before. "I'm Sebastian," just like that. And everything inside her shifted. Harper opened her mouth to respond excitedly, but his eyes were only on her, only on Maya, as if the entire bar had disappeared. "I'm Maya," she managed, shocked by the gravity of his gaze. He tilted his head, studying her. "May I sit?" She nodded without thinking. Harper, sensing that something far bigger than flirtation was happening, made a quick excuse and slipped away, leaving them in an intimate bubble that felt far too intense for such a crowded place. Their conversation started timidly, but it grew fast, too fast. He asked about her life, and unlike every other man she had ever met, he listened, really listened, with interest, with focus, as if every word she said mattered more than the entire bar. She talked about the unemployment, the fear of failing, the pressure from her family, things she normally hid. He didn't judge. He just listened, like someone who recognized pain. Then he spoke. Not superficial things, not easy jokes. He talked about expectations that suffocated him, burdens most people never noticed, dreams he kept to himself because they didn't match the image others had of him. The world around them seemed to slow. The music drifted to the background, the voices faded. It was just the two of them, sitting side by side, as if they had met in another life and were only remembering it now. After hours of talking, he leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Come with me." Maya froze. She had never been impulsive, never took risks, never accepted anything without overthinking it 1,000 times. But the way he said it, the way his eyes called to her, it felt like every frustration she had carried for months had finally found a crack to escape through. She knew it was crazy, knew she should say no, knew none of it made sense. But still, yes. The answer came before she could stop it. Sebastian smiled slowly, a smile that looked like he already knew something she didn't. He held out his hand, and Maya, heart racing, slid her fingers into his. The night outside seemed to wait, hold its breath, anticipate. And when they walked out of that bar, Maya's world, though she didn't know it yet, would never be the same again. The taxi moved through the avenues of Manhattan, as if gliding over the tension that filled the air. The city lights reflected against the windows, creating yellow streaks that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Maya's heartbeat. The driver was saying something about traffic, tourists, the rain, but the words reached her like distant, muffled sounds, unreal, far away. All she could feel was Sebastian's presence beside her. He was there, so close that the warmth of his body radiated in quiet waves, so close that she was certain if she took too deep a breath, she would brush against his skin without meaning to. But he was the one who moved first, leaning in with a confidence that felt almost dangerous, gently taking her chin between his fingers. And then he kissed her. It wasn't a hesitant kiss, the kind that asks for permission before crossing a line. It was a kiss that pulled the ground out from beneath her feet, a kiss that burned and sent chills through her at the same time, a kiss that said, "I want you," without using a single word. There was no softness at the start, only urgency, a desire that felt old and strangely familiar, as if they were picking up something that had never happened but somehow should have. Maya gasped when he deepened the kiss, one strong hand gripping her waist and pulling her closer. For a moment, one single devastating moment, she let everything happen without thinking. No rules, no caution, no limits. When the taxi finally stopped, she barely noticed. She only felt the cold night air hit her face when the door opened and Sebastian helped her out, his hand firm around hers. The hotel rising in front of them looked more like architectural art than a simple building. Columns of white marble stretched toward a ceiling, dripping with crystal chandeliers that cast a soft golden glow across the lobby. Thick carpets swallowed the sound of footsteps, the faint scent of roses blended with notes of expensive wood. Maya blinked, intimidated by the luxury, by the elegant silence of the place, by the sudden awareness that this was not the kind of world someone like her belonged to. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "It's okay," Sebastian murmured, stepping close enough that his voice brushed against her skin like a warm breath. "If you want to leave, I'll take you. Right now." But the way he said right now, with raw sincerity, with a calm that demanded nothing from her, only made everything more dangerous. I don't want to leave," she admitted, barely above a whisper. His smile was slow, contained, as if he were trying not to overwhelm her with the intensity he was holding back. He intertwined his fingers with hers and guided her toward the private elevator. The doors closed with a soft sound, and the small space filled with a heavy silence. Intimate, tense, electric. Maya could feel his breathing, his scent, the weight of her own decision. When the elevator began to rise, she leaned back slightly, trying to put just enough distance to steady her breath, but Sebastian moved toward her, slowly, until he stood directly in front of her. He didn't touch her. He didn't crowd her. He just looked at her, as if memorizing every flicker in her expression. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice deeper than before. The kind of voice that held choices, not impulses. It was a simple question, but she wanted to scream that she had never been so sure of something so wrong. "Yes," she whispered, "I'm sure." The elevator chimed softly and the doors opened, breaking the spell for a moment. The hallway was quiet, lit by low, warm lights that made everything feel intimate, as if the corridor itself invited secrets. The carpet absorbed the sound of their steps. Sebastian walked ahead just enough to lead her, never letting go of her hand, as if he feared she might disappear if he stopped touching her. The room was too spacious, too luxurious, too perfect. Neutral tones, wide windows framing a glowing Manhattan, flawless white sheets that seemed to invite and intimidate at the same time. When the door closed behind them, the entire world compressed into that room. Maya felt her heart slam against her ribs, her throat tightened. A wave of nerves nearly made her knees buckle, but he approached slowly, as if handling something breakable. He held her face between his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheeks softly, and he asked again, "Are you really sure?" She should have said no. She should have. Every part of her knew she should. But the voice that came out was steady, too sure to leave any doubt. "I am." Sebastian drew a slow breath, as if trying to keep himself under control. Then he kissed her again. But this time, there was no rush. There was reverence. There was care. One of his hands traced the length of her back, slowly learning her shape. Her breath quickened. When his lips traveled down her neck, Maya's entire body trembled, a mix of fear and desire. She had never felt this, never lived this, never been touched like this. She swallowed hard. He noticed, and he slowed down. "Maya," he murmured against her skin, "tell me if anything feels wrong." "No, it doesn't," she whispered. It's my first time." He froze, completely. His eyes lifted to hers with genuine surprise, almost reverence. "Really?" She nodded, embarrassed, wanting to vanish. But Sebastian didn't pull away, didn't stiffen, didn't shift. He rested his forehead against hers, exhaling softly as if asking permission just by breathing. "Thank you for trusting me this much," he said quietly. It wasn't what she expected to hear. It wasn't what any man would normally say. And somehow, it made everything even more intense. He laid her down with care, as if she was too important to be touched in haste. His hands discovered paths she had never let anyone explore. Every touch felt like he was learning her, not performing. Sebastian kissed her slowly, as if trying to memorize each reaction, and when they finally joined, he held her hand, guiding her, whispering soft words that made her feel safe and wanted at the same time. It was intense. It was new. It was overwhelming. And when everything ended, she lay there, breathing slowly, trying to understand what had just happened. Sebastian pulled her against him without asking, settling her on his chest, breathing as if she had taken something from him too. "Stay with me," he whispered. It was almost a request, almost a confession, almost a promise. But Maya felt something stretching inside her, a dangerous mix of fear and vulnerability. She had never stayed, never surrendered like this, never allowed her heart to walk somewhere it didn't belong. And because of that, when she realized he was starting to fall asleep, his breaths deep, his body relaxed, Maya panicked. The weight of the room, the weight of the moment, the weight of what it all meant. With trembling hands, she slipped away, searching for her clothes scattered across the floor. Each piece she put on felt heavier, each button fastened, whispering, "You don't belong here." She found paper and a pen on the desk and scribbled quickly, "Thank you for tonight. Please don't look for me." She knew it was cowardly. She knew it was cruel. She knew it was a Tao Xing, but she couldn't do anything else. When she stepped into the elevator, the tears finally fell, not for the usual reasons, not for frustration, not for rejection, not for fear of the future. It was something else, something she didn't have words for. And as the elevator descended, a painful tightness grew in her throat, as if a part of her already knew instinctively that the night wasn't over, and that nothing in her or in him would ever be the same again. Dawn arrived far too early, spilling cold light through the thin curtains of Maya's small bedroom. She woke with the strange sensation of floating between two worlds, the real one, and the one still pulsing in her thoughts, as vivid as the touch that lingered on her skin. But reality hit hard the moment she opened her eyes. Her body felt tired, heavy, not from lack of sleep, but from memories of hands, breaths, whispers, heat, memories that shouldn't exist. Her first instinct was to cover her face with both hands and whisper, "Oh God, what did I do?" The echo of that question seemed to come from the corners of the room itself. She didn't remember how she'd gotten home, didn't remember the door closing behind her, didn't remember the taxi, if she even took one. All she remembered were the tears in the elevator, adrenaline tangled with guilt, and the paper left on that hotel desk. That paper, that too short sentence, that escape. Maya felt her throat tighten until she almost choked. Why had she run like that? Why couldn't she stay? Why, of all moments in her life, had she chosen to give in on that night? Her phone vibrated so loudly on the nightstand that she flinched. Harper. Of course. Harper wanted answers. "Hey?" Harper's voice came through the moment Maya picked up. "For the love of God, tell me everything. Where did you sleep? Who did you sleep with? Are you alive?" "Harper," Maya whispered, struggling to sit up. "I messed up. Messed up like you spent money you didn't have? Or messed up like you slept with the hottest guy in the bar and now you're spiraling?" Maya swallowed hard, the memories of the night slicing through her breath. "It was my first time," she confessed, barely audible. The silence on the other end was so immediate, Maya thought the call had dropped. "You... what?" Harper finally said, much softer. "Wait, what do you mean? Seriously? Maya, you've never—" "I know," Maya cut in, hugging her knees. "I shouldn't have done it. I didn't even know him. It was impulsive. Stupid. Sweetheart." Harper exhaled, her voice now gentler, warmer. Are you regretting it?" Maya hesitated. "Because regret wasn't the right word. I don't know," she answered honestly. "It was incredible. But I panicked. He asked me to stay and I ran. I left a note, Harper. I just left." Harper stayed quiet for a few seconds before saying, "Okay, we'll talk about that later. Right now you have a much bigger problem." "A bigger problem than that?" "The interview," Harper said, practically yelling. "The Blackwood Technologies interview. It's today at 2. Maya, you cannot miss this." The word interview hit Maya like a punch. She looked at the clock. 10:12 a.m. "Harper, I didn't sleep. I'm wrecked. I can't show up like this." "You can and you will," Harper declared, "because this interview could change your entire life. Get up, take a freezing shower, and put on that outfit that makes you look like a CEO. Move." Maya inhaled deeply. Maybe this was exactly what she needed, a larger purpose to pull her out of her own head. She dropped her phone and stepped into the shower. The cold water hit her skin like a shock, trying to wash away not just the sweat of the night, but the memory of him on her skin, his scent, his touch, his heat. It didn't work. Every drop sliding down her body seemed to bring back a moment from the night, a whisper of the way Sebastian said her name, like he knew something about her no one else ever had. She wiped the fog from the mirror with one hand and froze, her neck a mark. Small, purple, obvious, a reminder, a signature, proof. "Shit," she muttered, grabbing her foundation and covering it as fast as she could. "Shit, shit, shit." Once she dressed in her black pencil skirt and crisp white blouse, she tied her hair into a tight bun, an almost desperate attempt to look like the version of herself she wished she still was. The version who would have said no. The version who spent nights reviewing spreadsheets. The version who didn't exist anymore, not after last night. On the crowded subway, she clung to the metal bar and tried to rehearse her interview answers in her head. But all she could think of was the feel of his hands, the weight of his body, the sound of his voice against her ear. And layered beneath that, another thought stung like a thorn. I'm never going to see him again. The words tightened her chest, but she swallowed them back. That was better, safer. Blackwood Technologies occupied a mirrored glass skyscraper that seemed to scrape the sky. The lobby was so vast it echoed. White marble floors, impeccably dressed receptionists, sophisticated security, everything there existed to remind visitors that they were entering something important, expensive, almost untouchable. Maya swallowed her nerves and stepped toward the front desk. "Good afternoon. I have an interview scheduled with the CEO," she said, still unsure she believed it. The receptionist raised her eyebrows, clearly impressed. "He's interviewing you personally. That's rare. He almost never does that." Maya's stomach dropped. The pressure was already enormous. Now it tripled. She was guided to a private elevator with mirrored walls that reflected her anxiety from every angle. The top floor felt impossibly far away. When the doors opened, a tall, elegant and impeccably composed assistant, Diane, appeared. her posture almost intimidating. "Please follow me." Maya's footsteps were tiny, hesitant, swallowed by the thick carpet. Diane stopped in front of enormous double doors made of glossy dark wood. She knocked lightly. A deep voice answered from inside. "Come in!" That sound, that tone, that weight. Maya froze. A memory flashed like lightning, that same voice, lower, warmer, whispering in a dark hotel room. "Stay with me." It couldn't be. It couldn't be him. Diane opened the door, and Maya saw. The world stopped, actually stopped. The office was massive. Glass, polished concrete, minimalist elegance, and a view of Manhattan so striking it looked unreal. But Maya didn't see any of it. She saw the man behind the desk. The impeccable shirt, the broad shoulders, the slightly messy hair, the focused expression as he reviewed documents. Sebastian. He lifted his eyes, and the moment their gazes met, reality shattered. The pen slipped from his hand. Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second, then narrowed, as if he were mentally rearranging everything he thought he knew. Slowly, Sebastian took off his reading glasses without breaking eye contact. Diane excused herself and closed the door behind them. Now it was just the two of them, in the same room, no midnight walls to hide behind. His voice cut through the air with calm precision. "So," he said, with a smile that wasn't entirely a smile, "you're Maya Chen." The air vanished from her lungs. The interview was about to begin, but there was nothing, absolutely nothing she could have done to prepare for what would happen next. The silence in that room felt heavier than anything Maya had ever experienced. It was as if the air had thickened, turned dense, clinging to her throat and making it impossible to take a deep breath. The world outside, the cars, the sirens, Manhattan's constant rush, disappeared. Nothing existed except him, Sebastian. His name burned in her mind as if it were being written there for the very first time. He sat behind a massive mahogany desk, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that left her speechless. But it wasn't the suit or the skyline stretching behind him through the glass wall that knocked her off balance. It was the fact that this man, the man from last night, the man with whom she had broken every one of her own rules, the man whose touch still echoed on her skin, was the CEO of the company where she was desperately trying to land a job. And neither of them had known. Or rather, he knew now. And the way he was looking at Maya left no room for escape. "So," he repeated, his voice low and controlled, "you're Maya Chen." She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Sebastian stood up slowly. There was no rush in his movements. There was calculation, intensity. He rounded the desk and walked toward her, each step making the floor seem to vibrate. Maya stepped back without even realizing it, until she bumped into the back of the chair behind her. He stopped less than a meter away. "Would you care to explain?" she managed to murmur, her voice weaker than she would have liked. Sebastian tilted his head slightly, like a man evaluating a newly discovered masterpiece. "Explain what?" he asked, his gaze burning into hers. "That you spent the night with me, that you left before sunrise, or that now you're standing in my office asking me for a job." The impact of his words twisted her stomach. "I didn't know who you were," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "I swear I didn't know. I never would have—" The sentence died before it could finish. Never would have what? Slept with him, gone with him, let him touch her that way. She didn't know the answer, and that scared her even more. He crossed his arms, watching her with a mix of frustration and something harder to define, a curiosity that felt almost dangerous. "You wouldn't have come with me?" he asked, his tone too gentle for the tension between them. "Wouldn't have kissed me back? Wouldn't have given yourself to me the way you did?" The memory of the night, the way he'd touched her, the weight of his body, the way she had said yes without thinking, made her face burn with shame. She turned her head, trying to escape his gaze. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. It was a mistake, an impulse. I don't usually act like that." "I know," he replied before she could say anything else. "I noticed." And the unexpected sincerity made her look up, startled. "And that's exactly why I tried to find you," he finished. Her heart stopped. "You tried to find me?" He drew in a slow breath and walked over to the window, slipping his hands into his pockets. The city glowed behind him, but not even all that light could pull his attention away from her. "I did," he said, looking down as if examining his own thoughts. "I went back to the hotel. Asked the front desk if you'd left a name. Asked the taxi driver if he remembered you. I even went back to the bar the same day." The confession hit Maya like a blow, spinning everything inside her. "Why?" she asked, almost against her will. "Why would you do that?" He turned toward her slowly, and when he did, his expression was completely unguarded, something she hadn't even seen the night before. "Because you left." The simple answer cut through her like a blade. Sebastian took a few steps in her direction, until he was close enough again for her to catch his scent, close enough to feel the tension in the air between them. "Most people would have stayed," he said. "Most people would have called me afterward. Most people would have used that night for something." The subtext was clear, and it hurt. She swallowed hard, fighting for words. I didn't want to look like—" "I know what you didn't want," he interrupted gently. "You didn't want to look like someone after an advantage. You didn't want to look like you were trading your body for anything. You didn't want me to think anything about you." Her face burned, but he didn't step closer, didn't push. He just let the words settle in the air between them. Then he drew a deeper breath and shifted his tone. "But we're here now," he said, his voice firmer. "And I have to ask you, do you still want this interview?" Her stomach twisted, because the answer was obvious. "Yes," she replied immediately. I need this job. I need this chance." His expression changed subtly, as if he appreciated her honesty. "Then let's begin," he said, gesturing to the chair. "Sit down." Maya sat slowly, trying to hide the tremor in her hands. Sebastian returned to his seat, reclaiming his professional posture. But no matter how composed he tried to look, something had already been altered, or created. His eyes moved back to her resume, but the way he read now was different. There was no more distance in that analysis. There was context, there was memory, there was history. "Your resume is impressive," he said, scanning the page. "Columbia graduate, fluent in 3 languages, excellent recommendation from your last internship." Maya exhaled softly, doing everything she could to hold on to her composure. But his voice, steady, deep, with that slight rough edge, still made her body remember everything it was supposed to forget. "And do you handle pressure well?" he asked, lifting his eyes to hers. "Real pressure, Maya, intense situations." She knew exactly what he was doing. She knew exactly where he was pressing. And still, she answered, "Yes, under any circumstances." Sebastian raised an eyebrow, a barely there smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Any?" he repeated, with just enough provocation to send a shiver down her spine. "Yes," she said, holding his gaze. The silence that followed stretched between them. Not awkward, charged. Finally he closed the folder, crossed his arms and studied her for a long moment. "Do you really want this job?" "I do," she answered without hesitation. "Why?" She took a slow breath. "Because I need a real opportunity. Because I know I can be excellent. Because I want to build something of my own." Sebastian weighed every word, as if decoding her intentions. Then he said, "I'm going to hire you." Maya blinked, stunned. "You're what?" "I'm going to hire you," he repeated clearly. "You're extremely qualified, more than most who sit in that chair, and because—" He drew in another breath. "I can't pretend that last night didn't happen, but I also won't let it interfere. If you want this position, it's yours." Shock rushed through her like a bolt of lightning. It was too good, too fast, too complicated. She started but couldn't finish. Isn't that a conflict? He leaned slightly forward. What conflict, Maya? He asked, voice low. Nothing happened. His gaze held hers, unflinching. You're just a qualified candidate, he continued, and I'm just the CEO. It's simple. But nothing was simple. Nothing was easy. Nothing felt light in that moment. The salary he mentioned next made her head spin. It was 3 times more than she had expected. Do you accept? He asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I accept, she said, before she could talk herself out of it. Sebastian smiled, a slow smile, deep, dangerous. Excellent, he said. Welcome to Blackwood Technologies. And it was in that exact moment, when he spoke those words, that Maya realized the problem wasn't the job, wasn't the night before, wasn't the tension hanging in the space between them. The problem was that her life had just changed in a way she didn't yet know how to understand, and that nothing, absolutely nothing from that point on, was going to be simple. Sebastian's office felt larger now, as if the air had suddenly gained more room to move. Or maybe it was just the growing pressure building inside Maya, taking shape in the corners of the room where the shadows seemed thicker. Sitting across from him, she tried to maintain her posture, her fingers laced tightly in her lap to hide the involuntary tremor. Sebastian closed the folder containing her resume and leaned back in his black leather chair, his gaze steady enough to pin her in place. Maya swallowed hard. He looked completely different from the man she had been with the night before. The warmth, the touch, the crooked smile, the whispered words in the dark. None of that was here now. What sat before her was the CEO, the billionaire, the commanding figure capable of silencing an entire room with a single sentence. And yet, there was still something in his eyes that betrayed him. Something that lingered on her a second longer than it should. Let's talk about you, he said finally, folding his hands on the desk. Your academic background is exceptional. Columbia, high grades, a strong recommendation from your last internship. I see fluency in English, Mandarin, and Spanish. He made it sound as though he was reviewing the information for the first time, but Maya knew with absolute certainty that he had memorized every line the moment she stepped into the office. Thank you, she murmured, her voice small, hoping to soften the tension on her own. He tilted his head. You seem nervous. I'm not, she answered too fast. The corner of his mouth lifted just slightly. Not a full smile, more like a quiet acknowledgement of the truth she failed to hide. I don't like lies, he said gently, especially from professionals I intend to hire. She straightened in her seat, feeling her spine resist. I don't usually lie, except when you run out of a hotel at 5 in the morning and leave nothing but a note, he replied. The air vanished from her lungs. Maya didn't look away, almost out of instinct, but her face burned with a heat that felt almost painful. That has nothing to do with this, she said, trying to salvage her dignity. It does, he countered without raising his voice, because I need to know whether you're going to run again when things get intense. The double meaning shot across the room like silent lightning, vibrating between them. Maya's body reacted before her mind did. A sudden shiver, a flash of the night invading her skin in ways it shouldn't. She blinked hard, drawing a deep breath, trying to piece her rationality back together. I came here for an interview, she said firmly, and I'm fully prepared to work hard under any pressure. Sebastian rested his elbows on the desk and leaned forward slightly, as if he were studying her soul. Any pressure? He repeated. There was a hidden provocation in his voice, but there was sincerity too, as if he truly wanted to know. Yes, she said without hesitation. I know how to separate personal things from professional responsibilities. Are you sure? Now he seemed to be testing her, measuring lines, measuring control. I'm sure, she replied, though her throat tightened. Sebastian leaned back again, but his eyes remained fixed on her, sharp and attentive, as if every movement she made was being recorded. "Good," he said. "Then let's continue." The next questions were technical. Calendar management, financial reporting, internal crisis handling. Maya answered clearly, though her breathing occasionally wavered. Every time he asked a more complex question, she felt her heartbeat spike, not because of the question, but because of the way he studied her reactions. When she finished detailing a specific data analysis process, Sebastian rested his chin in his hand and said, "You speak with confidence. I like that." Maya whispered a quiet, "Thank you," but immediately sensed something shifting in the air. He stood slowly, walking toward the massive window that revealed Manhattan in its quiet chaos. His hands slipped into the pockets of his dress pants, the gesture natural, almost intimate, yet sharply contrasted by his carefully composed CEO demeanor. "Can I be direct?" he asked, still facing the city. "Of course." He turned his body gradually, leaning against the edge of the desk behind him, still standing tall, still exuding control. "You're smart, talented, and you have more courage than you think." Sebastian drew a slow breath. "And I can't stop thinking about last night." Maya's heart pounded so hard she was certain it echoed through the room. Her eyes widened, unable to hide the shock. "Please don't," she began, but he stopped her with the slightest movement of his hand. "Don't worry," he said, his voice lower, more controlled. "I'm not going to use that against you. I won't harass you. I won't put you in any uncomfortable situations." He took another step toward her, a slow step, carefully measured. "But I'm also not going to pretend it didn't happen." Maya felt her throat dry instantly. "Sebastian, this is inappropriate," she whispered. "It is," he agreed without hesitation. "Completely." Another step, closer, more presence, more impossibility. "But I still want you." She closed her eyes for half a second, her breath faltering. "This could ruin my career before it even starts," Maya said, her voice trembling. "People will think that you got the job because you slept with me." He finished calmly. She remained silent, because that was exactly what she feared, exactly what was eating her alive. Sebastian took a deeper breath and shifted back into a professional tone, stepping away as though wrestling his own intensity back into place. "I'm offering you the job because you've earned it," he said. "Because you're qualified. Because your mind works in a way that interests me, professionally." He watched her as if waiting for her internal conflict to settle. And he waited. "And," he added, "because I know you're not a coward." Maya swallowed hard. "I'm not," she began, but couldn't finish. It was a lie she couldn't sustain. "Is that why you ran?" he asked. "Fear?" She didn't answer. Not because she didn't know, but because she knew too well. Sebastian returned behind his desk and opened a black folder, pulling out several documents. "The position is yours," he said with absolute firmness, "with a salary 3 times above average, full benefits, and the responsibility of working directly with me." Shock rippled through Maya like an earthquake under her skin. "But you need to know one thing," he added, locking eyes with her. "If you accept, you'll have to learn to deal with intense situations." He didn't need to explain which situations. "And I promise," he said softly, "I won't cross any lines unless you want me to." Maya's legs nearly buckled. "So?" he asked, his voice lower now, heavier. "Do you accept?" The world shrank around her. The air felt thin, her body too hot or too cold, she couldn't tell. And even as she tried to be rational, even knowing she was stepping into dangerous territory, "I accept," she said. She couldn't stop the words. They came on their own. A slow smile curved on his face, not cocky, not victorious, something deeper, something far more dangerous. "Good," he said. "You start Monday." And then he did something unexpected, something that sent a shock through her spine. He walked toward her again, measured steps, controlled posture. He stopped behind her chair and leaned down slowly. His breath brushed the skin at her neck. "Welcome to the game, Maya." She closed her eyes for a brief second, tempted to turn her face toward him. Sebastian noticed. He stepped back. "You can go," he said, his voice back to its professional register. "Diane will give you the details." Maya stood, her heart pounding, her mind spinning out of control. She reached the door when he spoke again. "Maya." She turned slowly. "Don't run this time." The way he said it, low, firm, almost a request, lingered on her skin like another touch. And when she stepped out into the cool hallway air, she knew. This wasn't the end of the interview. It was only the beginning. The week had barely begun, and Maya already felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. She woke before her alarm even rang, her eyes burning from lack of sleep. The night had been a storm of thoughts, the offer, the memory of his kiss, the echo of his voice lingering in the corners of her mind, as if he were still there, too close, too dangerous. She kept repeating to herself, "It's just a job. It's just a job. It's just a job." But nothing felt simple. Staring at herself in the mirror, Maya adjusted her tight, impeccable bun, smoothed her cream blouse with trembling hands, and inhaled deeply. She needed to look strong, professional, untouchable. The kind of assistant who couldn't be shaken by anything. The subway was packed, the noise overwhelming, but everything sounded distant. Her thoughts were louder than the world around her. When she reached the mirrored glass building of Blackwood Technologies, her stomach twisted. The vast lobby, the polished marble floors, the walls lit by digital screens displaying charts, reports, market movements, everything delivered a single message. Here, you need to be perfect. She passed through security with her temporary badge and headed for the elevator. Her heartbeat was so fast, it felt like a runaway train. The silent elevator reflected her anxious face in the polished steel. The moment the doors opened on the executive floor, Diane appeared, calm, elegant, impossibly composed. Her eyeliner sharp, her bun high and severe, her beige suit perfectly pressed. "Miss Chen." "Good morning," she said in a voice that was gentle but unyielding. "I'll show you your station and explain procedures." The entire floor seemed to operate on a different frequency. Calculated silences, controlled footsteps, low voices, all of it tinged with an almost military discipline. Maya followed Diane, trying to absorb everything: the spotless hallway, the frosted glass doors with engraved names, the employees rushing past with folders and tablets. Her desk was exactly where she feared it would be, directly across from Sebastian's office. So close she could see the dark, imposing door and the understated plaque. Sebastian Blackwood, CEO. Coincidence? Highly unlikely. "This will be your workstation," Diane explained, gesturing to the dual monitors, the corporate phone, the perfectly organized desk accessories. "You'll manage Mr. Blackwood's full schedule, handle vendors, organize contracts, filter calls, and coordinate internal and external meetings." Maya tried to keep her expression calm, but her heart raced with each instruction. "He is demanding, extremely demanding," Diane continued. "Black coffee, no sugar, at precisely 9:03. He dislikes delays, detests incompetence, and never, under any circumstances, repeat an instruction to him twice." "Understood," Maya murmured. "And one more thing," Diane said quietly, lowering her voice. "Avoid any tension with Rebecca Sinclair." The name carried a silent warning. "And who is Rebecca?" Maya asked. "The chief financial officer and—" Diane paused before finishing. "She has a personal interest in Mr. Blackwood." Maya's stomach dropped immediately. "She doesn't appreciate attractive women in proximity," Diane added gently but with pointed clarity. Before Maya could respond, Sebastian's door opened. He stepped out, navy suit, Dark tie, sleeves perfectly aligned, tall posture commanding enough to freeze the air around him. Conversations on the floor dimmed almost imperceptibly as he passed. There was something magnetic about him, an undeniable presence that filled every inch of space. His eyes found Maya's for a single moment, 1 second, but it felt like minutes. Maya forgot how to breathe. Sebastian didn't smile, but something in his gaze softened, so subtly that only she would notice. "Good morning, Miss Chen," he said with a calmness that sent a shiver down her spine. Good morning," she replied, struggling not to sound affected. "Come with me, please," he said. Diane shot Maya a warning look. Follow protocol, always. But Maya simply nodded and walked into his office. The door closed behind them, and the world shrank, smaller, warmer, dangerous. Sebastian walked around his desk, placing both hands on its edge, inhaling deeply before turning toward her. "We need to establish some rules," he said, his voice low and firm. Maya swallowed hard. "First, in here I am only your boss. You are my assistant, nothing else." A chill ran down her spine. He continued. "Second, what happened between us stays in the past. It won't be mentioned, it won't be repeated, and it will not influence anything here." Maya tried to hide the mix of relief and pain twisting inside her, but Sebastian wasn't finished. "Third, if at any point you feel uncomfortable, for any reason, you tell me. Immediately." The unexpected concern startled her. "Why are you telling me all this?" she asked softly. He took 1 step toward her, just one, but it was enough to make her breath catch. "Because I don't want you thinking you're here for any reason other than your own merit," he said, his voice so sincere it almost sounded vulnerable. "And because you're not like the others." Maya looked away, a weight tightening in her chest. "I just need to work," she whispered. "I need this to work." "Then we'll make it work," he said simply. And just like that, he switched back to professional mode. The rest of the morning was a test of endurance. Sebastian summoned her repeatedly. "Maya, I need the market report. Maya, reschedule my meeting with legal. Maya, review this contract and highlight inconsistencies." Every time she stepped into his office, her heart beat harder. Every interaction felt charged. His presence was overwhelming. Worse, he noticed everything, every flush of her cheeks, every hitch in her breath, every hesitation. Near noon, as she handed him a document, their fingers brushed. Maya recoiled instinctively. Sebastian did not. He simply lifted his eyes, slowly, holding her in place for a second too long. Her entire body reacted. She rushed out before the air could ignite into something forbidden. But she barely had a moment to recover before a sharp, elegant presence appeared in front of her. Rebecca Sinclair, perfect blonde hair, expensive clothes, strong perfume. A smile sharp enough to cut. "You must be the new assistant," Rebecca said, tilting her head with poisonous sweetness. "Interesting choice." Maya opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Rebecca continued. "Not everyone gets promoted from the street straight into the CEO's office." Her smile was pure provocation. "Congratulations." And then she walked into Sebastian's office without knocking. The way she said Seb dripped like venom. Maya stood frozen, a bitter wave rising in her throat. The rest of the afternoon only intensified. Glances, silences, accidental touches, messages far too formal to hide the subtext beneath them. By the time the clock hit 5 p.m., Maya was exhausted. Not from the work, but from the constant tension. But the worst was still coming. Because as she gathered her things, her hands trembling, a notification popped up on her computer. "Sebastian Blackwood requests your presence in his office. Now." Her heart skipped a beat. She took a breath, stood, and walked toward his door. One step, then another, then another. She opened it slowly. Sebastian stood beside his desk, his suit jacket removed, his sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms, signs of a long, exhausting day. His white shirt was slightly wrinkled in all the right places. He lifted his eyes when she entered. "We need to talk," he said. And in that moment, Maya knew. The rules they set that morning were about to be broken. From the very first day, Rebecca Sinclair seemed to watch Maya with a kind of sharp attention, not curious, but threatening. It was the kind of gaze that didn't need words to say you don't belong here. Despite Diane's warnings, Maya still didn't fully grasp the extent of Rebecca's influence inside Blackwood Technologies. Chief Financial Officer, one of the youngest women in the industry to reach such a high-ranking position, respected, feared, flawless in everything she did, and completely obsessed with Sebastian. Maya's first week made that brutally clear. Rebecca spent more time in Sebastian's office than in her own, always entering without knocking, always with some relevant excuse, always wearing perfumes that announced her presence before she even spoke, and always ignoring Maya's existence, or worse, acknowledging her only to diminish her. That morning, for example, Rebecca appeared like a silent storm, quick steps in high heels, immaculate red lipstick, eyes sharp enough to cut. "Maya," she said, stopping beside the assistant's desk with a smile that never touched her eyes, "could you announce me to Sebastian?" It was provocation, psychological warfare. Rebecca never needed to be announced. "Of course," Maya replied with practiced politeness, even though the CFO was already pushing open Sebastian's office door without waiting. When the door closed behind Rebecca, Maya heard only murmurs, but the tone was unmistakable. Rebecca was laughing, that low, calculated laugh she saved exclusively for Sebastian. Maya tried to focus on the report she needed to organize, but the sound echoed like an unwelcome reminder, like a warning. A few minutes later, the door opened, and Rebecca stepped out, light, satisfied. As she passed Maya's desk, she leaned casually, like someone offering advice. Except it wasn't advice. "Next time, darling, try wearing something a little less youthful. We wouldn't want anyone getting the wrong impression." Maya's breath hitched for a second, but her face stayed neutral, almost cold. "Thank you for the suggestion, Miss Sinclair," she answered, polite but sharp. Rebecca blinked slowly, surprised by the lack of submission, by the self-control. And that was only the beginning. The silent war begins. Over the weeks that followed, Rebecca began testing boundaries with surgical precision. One, passive-aggressive comments about Maya's clothes, her age, her lack of experience, about how young assistants never last long. Two, nasty observations disguised as kindness. "You must be learning so much from Sebastian. He's very demanding with those who serve him closely." 3. Professional micro-attacks. Questions meant to embarrass Maya in front of the team. Unnecessary corrections, conflicting instructions. Maya endured it all, but every day her body grew more tense, her mind more alert. There was always the unspoken question. Does she know? Does she know about the night? Does she know what happened? Does she know what is beginning to happen now? Every cutting look from Rebecca seemed to say yes, even if she had no proof. The meeting room incident. It happened during a meeting with senior executives. The moment things escalated. Maya had spent hours preparing an updated financial report, data, projections, quarterly variance analysis, the kind of document that required absolute precision. She delivered everything on time, and Sebastian reviewed it with a silent nod of approval. But in the meeting, with more than 20 executives present, Rebecca saw her opening. "Excuse me," she said, flipping through the pages with exaggerated disdain, "but these numbers are incorrect." All eyes turned to Maya. Her body froze. Rebecca continued, "You used the raw projections instead of the adjusted ones. Perhaps someone more experienced should review this next time." The humiliation hit like a cold, sharp blow. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Before she could speak, a voice cut through the room. Cold, firm, lethal. "The numbers are correct," Sebastian said, without raising his voice. Rebecca blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry." "She used the adjusted projections," he said, turning the report so everyone could see. "You're looking at the wrong column, Rebecca." A deadly silence filled the room. "Perhaps," he added, "you should pay closer attention before interrupting." Rebecca went still, just for a moment, but long enough for Maya to see the flame of silent fury ignite in her eyes. And in that moment, Maya knew. Rebecca would not forget this, she would not forgive, and she certainly would not back down. The hostility intensifies. After the meeting, the atmosphere at the company shifted. Rebecca no longer looked at Maya like an irrelevant subordinate. She looked at her like an obstacle, a threat. Someone Sebastian was willing to defend, and for Rebecca that was unacceptable. The attacks grew sharper. "Your blouse is wrinkled. Do you know how to use an iron? You stayed late yesterday? I thought you wanted a job, not a school schedule. Sebastian trusts you so much. How curious." Every sentence was a knife dipped in honey, and Maya learned to dodge them, not without wounds, but with growing resilience. The late-night work incident. It happened on a Friday night. The office was nearly empty, lights dimmed, computers off. Just Maya and Sebastian working late to prepare documents for an upcoming meeting with international investors. They worked side by side, but the tension was almost tangible. Words formal, but glances too long. Movements controlled, but proximity warm enough to burn. At one point, while handing him a report, their hands touched again, longer this time. The air thickened. His eyes met hers, and Maya felt her whole body react before she could think. He stepped closer. A slow step, a steady breath, an unmistakable intention. "Maya!" His voice was low, almost a whisper. She held her breath. "You're very good at pretending you don't feel anything." Her heart slammed against her ribs. I'm not pretending," she tried to say weakly. He leaned in, his mouth dangerously close to her ear. "Then say you don't feel it." A challenge, a provocation, a truth he already knew. She tried, she wanted to say it, but her throat refused to move. Sebastian's smile appeared, soft, satisfied, almost cruel in its honesty. "You can't." Then he stepped back, leaving Maya shaking. "Good night, Miss Chen," he said, slipping effortlessly back into professional mode, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just dismantled every one of her defenses with a single sentence. Maya stayed in the office, trying to regain her breath, but outside, hidden among the parked cars, someone was watching. A silhouette, a feminine shape, a phone in her hand. Rebecca. She saw. She heard enough. She understood everything she needed to understand, and a slow, vengeful smile spread across her face in the dark. Because that night, the silent war stopped being silent, and it was only just beginning. The end of that Friday carried a kind of silence that wasn't just the absence of noise. It felt as if the walls of the company were breathing, with the last traces of light fading through the tall windows. The desks were empty, computers shut down, and the only living sound on the entire floor was the soft ticking of the digital clock above the conference room door. Maya took a slow breath, feeling goosebumps rise on her skin as she realized it was just her and Sebastian in that vast, echoing space. There were no more voices in the hallway, no hurried footsteps, no printers humming non-stop. Only the distant murmur of the city beyond the glass, and her heartbeat, too fast, too loud. Sebastian was too close. He walked back and forth between his desk and the window with calculated slowness, hands in his suit pockets, shoulders tense, eyes heavy as if he were weighing something he hadn't yet gathered the courage to admit. The soft evening light caught the edges of his face, leaving sharp shadows that made his expression even more intense. Maya pretended to be reviewing a report, but the words blurred on the screen. The truth was, she felt every movement he made, every shift of his breath, every moment he walked close enough for his cologne to brush against her, warm, deep, commanding. The tension filled the air like electricity about to explode. "We need to finish these documents today," he said, but his voice didn't sound like a CEO speaking to his assistant. It sounded like a man trying to control something far bigger than work. "Of course," she answered, forcing a professional tone. But Sebastian stopped beside her, bracing one hand on the desk as he leaned down to read the screen over her shoulder. The closeness made Maya's throat dry. Heat radiated from his body, trailing up her arm, spreading to her neck. She tightened her fingers to regain focus, but it was impossible to ignore how near, how overwhelmingly near he was. For a few seconds they stayed like that. Silence, proximity, suspended breath. Then Sebastian spoke, quietly, so quietly only she could hear. "You shouldn't be here alone with me this late." Maya blinked. "Why?" He turned his head. His eyes met hers from inches away. This time there was no teasing, no smirk, only raw honesty. "Because I can't behave when we're alone." The words dropped between them like truth, finally escaping its cage. Maya's heart thundered so violently she didn't realize she had stood up until she felt the chair push back. Sebastian stepped away, but not like someone retreating. It was more like someone giving her space for a choice he desperately hoped she wouldn't make. "Maya," he began, his voice catching for a split second. "The night at the hotel, Don't talk about that here," she cut in too quickly. He lifted his chin slightly. "Why?" The question sounded more emotional than he intended. "Because," she tried to breathe, "because I can't think about that while I'm working. I can't feel those things here." "Those things," he repeated, with a half-smile that held no humor. "You want me to pretend I don't feel anything, to ignore it, to keep acting like you didn't run away the way you did?" She closed her eyes, her face burning. "Sebastian, please." But he stopped speaking. He didn't need to continue. The silence thickened, sharper, hotter. The walls seemed to trap the air, holding what was about to happen. Maya took an instinctive step back, but Sebastian stepped forward, an involuntary reflex, as if pulled by something he no longer wanted to resist. They stopped inches apart. The air pulsed between them. "You can leave if you want," he said, voice low and rough, "but if you stay, I won't promise anything." Her body trembled. She didn't step closer, but she didn't step away. Sebastian noticed. He leaned in slightly, not touching her, just close enough for her to feel the intent behind his breath. "Tell me you don't feel anything," he whispered. "Tell me you don't think about that night every time you look at me. Tell me you don't remember me when you close your eyes." Maya opened her mouth, but nothing came out. His eyes softened. The confirmation he'd been waiting for. "Liar," he murmured with a crooked, knowing smile. And that was when everything broke. His hand rose slowly to the side of her face, his fingers brushing her skin with reverent care, as if touching something he had waited too long to touch again. Maya didn't pull back. Not this time. The touch was the first collapse. The second was the look. The third was the kiss. There was no warning, no pause, no room for thought. The kiss came like something stored for weeks, deep, urgent, burning. Nothing had been this intense since the hotel, but this was different. In the office there was tension, authority, forbidden desire. There was the risk of someone walking in, someone hearing, everything falling apart. Maybe that's what made it feel so visceral. Maya gasped softly as his lips moved against hers with restrained hunger. Sebastian gripped her waist firmly, pulling her closer as if he couldn't bear another second apart. Her body reacted instantly, instinctively, recognizing his touch even before her mind accepted it. It was a kiss of weeks repressed. A kiss that burned straight into the soul, a kiss that shouldn't exist, but did. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathless. "This," she whispered, unable to finish. "I know," he said, resting his forehead against hers. "It wasn't supposed to happen." Maya's breaths came too fast. "Sebastian, this is wrong." "Completely." His hand slid gently up her neck. "But I can't stop." Her eyes stung. "I'm going to ruin your career," she said, swallowing tears she didn't know she had. "People will talk. They'll think I'll handle them," he cut in. "I can take all of it. I don't care what they think about me." "But I care," she whispered. Sebastian looked at her as if those words cracked something inside him. "Then tell me you don't want me," he challenged softly. "Tell me you don't think about me when you're alone. Tell me you don't feel anything when I'm close." She opened her mouth, tried to speak, but the truth refused to leave her lips. "You can't," he said even softer, "because I feel it." The confession lingered between them, thick, overwhelming. Maya's breath hitched again. Her eyes filled with involuntary tears. Her body trembled as if it were about to collapse. "Sebastian, please." She couldn't even finish. He held her by the arms, gentle but firm, as if afraid she would disappear. "This isn't over," he murmured, "because you don't want it to be over." His phone rang, a sharp, intrusive, cruel sound. Rebecca Sinclair. Her name glowed on the screen. Sebastian closed his eyes, pure frustration tightening his jaw. Maya stepped back, as if that name were ice water thrown over both of them. She stammered. "I need to go." He didn't move, only stared at her with an expression that mixed frustration, longing, and something unfinished. "Maya." But she left before he could finish. And as she crossed the empty corridors, heart racing, lips still burning with the taste of that kiss, she understood something that sent a shiver through her. They had crossed a line that could never be undone. And in the dark parking lot, hidden in the shadows, Rebecca slipped her phone into her purse, enough proof of what she had seen. This wasn't just the beginning. It was the spark of something capable of destroying reputations, careers, lives. And the explosion was getting dangerously close. The weekend arrived like a breath that never quite came. Maya spent 2 full days trying to convince herself that the kiss in the office had been a monumental mistake, something that needed to be buried before it spiraled out of control. But every time she closed her eyes, she felt the pressure of Sebastian's lips on hers all over again, the firm grip on her waist, the warm murmur that still seemed to vibrate along her neck. She tried to ignore it, tried to distract herself, tried to erase it, but she couldn't. And when she returned to work on Monday, all it took was hearing his name mentioned in the hallway for her heart to sprint painfully inside her chest. It was ridiculous, immature, dangerous, but uncontrollable. The first time she saw Sebastian that day, he was coming out of a meeting with investors. His expression serious, hands tucked into the pockets of his suit pants, his stride confident and controlled. Everything about him radiated power, authority, distance. But when his eyes found hers for a single, fleeting second, something inside her ignited. He looked away immediately, as if determined not to let anything show. But that 1 second had been real, and more than enough. The beginning of the secret. Their communication during the first half of the week was strictly professional. Formal, dryly polite, a carefully choreographed dance. "Maya, update the board's schedule." "Yes, sir." "Maya, I need the revised report by 3. "Of course." No lingering looks, no accidental touches, no spoken memories. But the subtext was everywhere. Gestures that lasted a fraction of a second too long, silences that carried meaning, breaths that shifted whenever one stood too close to the other. And Rebecca, with her venomous intuition, seemed to smell something despite lacking concrete proof. Her eyes followed Maya across the floor, measuring every movement, analyzing every smile Maya failed to suppress. But everything changed on Wednesday night, the after-hours encounter. It was 10:15 p.m. when Maya finally finished organizing the contracts Sebastian needed to review. The office was almost completely empty, just a few motion sensor lights glowing faintly, casting a lonely, muted shine across the corridor. She took a deep breath before knocking on his door. "Come in." His voice was low, but tired. When she stepped inside, she found him with his tie loosened, his sleeves slightly wrinkled at the elbows, his posture worn down by exhaustion. He looked more human like that, and even more dangerous to her heart. "I brought the finalized contracts," she said, trying to keep her tone neutral. Sebastian lifted his eyes, and in that instant, something shifted. There were no words, only a thick, loaded silence. He didn't look away, didn't fold his arms, didn't pretend to be distant. He simply looked, and Maya felt her entire body react. Her breath hitched. Her heart thudded so loudly she feared it might echo in the room. She placed the contracts on his desk and turned to leave. But before she reached the door, he spoke. "Maya." The way he said her name, low, drawn out, almost broken, made her stop. "How long are you going to avoid me?" She closed her eyes. Her whole body trembled. "I'm not avoiding you," she said, but her voice was too weak to convince anyone. "Yes, you are," he replied without hesitation, "and I understand, but I can't pretend that we isn't happening." She turned slowly. Sebastian was now standing, only a few steps away from her. His expression wasn't arrogant, wasn't teasing, it was vulnerable. "I tried," he said, walking toward her with slow, deliberate steps. "I swear I tried to keep my distance, but I can't." The air grew heavier, warmer, alive. "Sebastian, please." It was all she managed to say. He took another step. "This isn't just physical for me." The sentence hit her like a soft, devastating blow. "I looked for you after that night," he confessed, "not because I was angry, but because I felt like I'd lost something before I even understood it was mine." Her eyes filled with involuntary tears. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't risk my career. People will talk. They'll think—" "I don't care what they think about me," he cut in, voice steady. "But I care about you." Maya felt her lungs collapse on themselves. "It's not fair," she said, voice trembling. "I don't know how to handle this." He stepped even closer. Now they were nearly touching. "Then let me handle it," he whispered. "Just give me a chance." His hands rose to her face with heartbreaking gentleness, and Maya finally stopped resisting. The kiss happened like an inevitable collapse. It was intense, deep, desperate, but unlike the first kiss in the office, born out of fire and provocation, this one was a plea, a surrender, a meeting of two fears, two vulnerabilities, two desires that had been denied for far too long. The kiss deepened quickly, turning into something stronger. Their bodies moved closer, as if they had been made to fill that space together. Heat filled every corner of the room, and as Maya breathed shakily against his lips, everything inside her screamed that she was lost. Lost and happy, lost and safe, lost and alive. "Come with me," he murmured against her neck. "Just tonight. Just so we can understand what this is turning into." She didn't know if it was right, didn't know if it was safe, but she knew she didn't want to say no, and that was how the hidden nights began, the secret meetings. They created a dangerous game. During the day, formality, silent tension, perfectly professional exchanges that hid the storm inside both of them. But at night, they became two strangers who knew each other far too well. Sebastian had a luxurious apartment on the Upper East Side, quiet, elegant, with massive windows overlooking Manhattan's glowing skyline. That was where they went when the week felt too heavy. He cooked for her. She laughed at things she'd never dare laugh about at the office. He studied every detail of her as if storing each one. She discovered sides of him no one else saw. The man who read poetry late at night, who spoke about fears instead of business, who felt more than he ever showed. One night, lying on his chest, Maya asked, "Why me?" He stroked her hair slowly, because that was how he answered complicated questions. "Because you see me," he finally said. "Not the money, not the position, not the name, just me." Her heart tightened painfully. But the danger was real. They avoided touching at work, avoided holding eye contact too long, avoided attracting attention. But it was impossible to hide everything, and Rebecca was always there, always watching, always smiling a little too much when something felt off. The parking lot and the shadow. One night, after staying late, Sebastian walked Maya to his car in the underground parking lot. They thought they were alone, wrapped in the dim, echoing quiet. "You can kiss me here," he whispered playfully against the corner of her mouth. "I promise no one will show up." She sighed, giving in to a quick, forbidden kiss. A kiss meant to last a second, but it lasted far more than that. And when they finally pulled apart, neither of them noticed the silhouette hidden behind one of the pillars. The flash of a phone camera was brief, discreet, deadly. Rebecca slipped her phone back into her bag with a cold smile. Now she had what she needed, and the downfall was about to begin. Blackwood Technologies' annual event was just as grand as the company's reputation. Hundreds of guests, investors, industry leaders, journalists, and powerful names in the sector filled the main ballroom of a five-star hotel in the heart of Manhattan. Crystal chandeliers glittered above flawless tables, white roses decorated every corner, and waiters glided past with trays of sparkling champagne. For Maya, this was the kind of setting she had always seen from afar, from very far. But now, by some twist of fate, she was there, not as a guest, but as part of the executive team. She was responsible for the logistics of the entire event. Every detail had passed through her hands: the guest list, timing, equipment, speeches, presentations, reservations, coordination with vendors, everything, which was why she arrived before everyone else that night. She wore an elegant navy dress, discreet but perfectly tailored, the kind that projected professionalism and sophistication without excess. Her hair was pulled back into a low bun, leaving her face clean, serious, and mature. She wanted to look like someone solid, competent, who deserved to be there, not someone hiding a secret that could destroy her career. When she saw Sebastian enter the ballroom, her whole body reacted. He wore a perfectly fitted black tuxedo, his hair slicked back, his expression steady in that way that broadcast confidence, power, presence. It was almost impossible not to look, but she looked away. She had to. They had agreed to keep their distance. Even so, the quick glance he sent across the room reached her like a direct hit. It lasted a second, barely noticeable, but she felt it, and that was enough to keep her heart restless for the rest of the night. The game of appearances. The event began promptly at 8. Important investors gathered in small circles, discussing numbers and possibilities while the hum of voices filled the room. Maya moved through the crowd with her digital clipboard, checking everything, noting last-minute issues, coordinating quietly from the sidelines. Every now and then, her eyes met Sebastian's. Nothing overt, nothing obvious. But something was there, and that was dangerous. At 9:30, Rebecca entered the ballroom in a shimmering silver dress, perfectly tailored to her body, makeup flawless, smile perfectly practiced. Her eyes swept the room until they landed on Maya, and in that instant, Maya felt as if someone had turned a spotlight directly on her. Rebecca walked toward her slowly, like a snake studying its prey. "You look presentable," she said, with a tone as fake as her smile. Not bad for someone new to this kind of environment. Maya kept her voice professional. "Thank you, Ms. Sinclair." Relax, Rebecca purred, leaning closer. You can call me Rebecca. We're all on the same team here, after all. The sentence tasted like liquid poison. Of course, Maya replied. But Rebecca didn't leave. She watched her for a few stretched seconds, as if searching for some invisible clue. Then she whispered softly, I hope your evening is going smoothly, without distractions. The way she said distractions sent an immediate chill down Maya's spine. Before Maya could respond, Rebecca drifted away with her usual arrogant elegance. Maya swallowed hard. The feeling wouldn't leave. Rebecca knew, or thought she knew, and that was worse than certainty. Sebastian's speech. At 10, Sebastian stepped onto the stage for his annual speech. The lights shifted toward him. The murmur in the room faded. Soon, the ballroom was completely silent. He spoke with charisma, confidence, authority. It was impossible not to listen. From the back of the room, Maya watched him with a mix of pride and dread. The man on the stage was completely different from the one who cooked for her in his apartment, who kissed her like she was the only real thing in his world. When the speech ended, the room erupted into applause. Sebastian stepped down from the stage with practiced ease, greeting colleagues, investors, partners. Maya allowed herself a small, discreet smile, feeling a warm pressure building in her chest. And it was exactly then that everything began to fall apart. The beginning of the bomb. Rebecca reappeared at Maya's side, this time wearing a smile so satisfied it looked ready to crack. You look proud, she said, tilting her head. It's sweet, actually. Maya didn't answer. That smile, that look. Something was wrong. Very wrong. All of a sudden, Rebecca picked up a champagne flute, lifted it slightly, and tapped it with a spoon, producing a metallic ring that sliced through the air. Attention, please. The sound echoed strangely. The room quieted to a low murmur. Sebastian, who had been talking with investors, turned slowly toward her. Maya felt the world tilt. Rebecca smiled, that cold, calculated, venomous smile, and said, Sorry to interrupt, but I think there's something important everyone should know about our dear CEO and his new assistant. Maya's heart stopped, simply stopped. The blood drained from her face. She couldn't breathe. Rebecca, Sebastian said, striding toward the center of the room. Stop. Now. But she didn't stop. It seems our talented Miss Maya Chen secured her job in a rather, shall we say, special way. A wave of whispers swept through the room. I have proof, Rebecca continued, lifting her phone. Photos, witnesses, intimate moments between her and Mr. Blackwood in the parking garage last week. Maya's knees nearly gave out. This is absurd, Sebastian said, now standing just a step away from Rebecca. Delete that. Now. Absurd? Rebecca laughed, bitter. Or just embarrassing. I always wondered why the almighty Sebastian Blackwood would hire an inexperienced girl for his most trusted position. Now it's clear. The murmurs grew louder. Eyes turned, heavy and judgmental, toward Maya. The air turned suffocating. I wonder, Rebecca went on, dripping cruelty, what other skills she offered to secure the job. The final blow, public humiliation, character assassination, delivered with a smile and poison. Maya didn't hear the rest. Her body switched into survival mode, short breaths, blurred vision, muffled sound. People were looking at her like she was a fraud, an opportunist, a disgrace. She couldn't stay there. She couldn't. She wouldn't survive it. She ran. She didn't look back. She heard her name, Sebastian's voice calling after her, but she ignored it. She pushed through doors, moved down a bright hallway, burst into the women's restroom, and locked herself in the first stall. And there she broke. She cried like she had never cried before. until her bones hurt, until her own body felt too small to hold so much shame. Everything she'd tried to avoid, everything she feared, everything she hid, everything she tried to protect, had happened, and in the cruelest way possible. A few minutes later she heard loud knocks on the bathroom door. "Maya, open the door, now!" Sebastian's voice, low, urgent, desperate. More knocks. "Maya, please." She didn't answer. She couldn't. She wasn't capable of it. She just squeezed her eyes shut and rested her head against her knees. And that was how everything collapsed. And yet, even in that collapse, something even bigger was still about to happen. The bathroom was silent except for Maya's muffled sobs. The cold marble floor beneath her shoes felt more stable than her own legs. The reflections of the chandelier shimmered in distorted patterns on the tile, as if the world itself were melting around her. And it was, at least the world she knew. Outside, someone knocked on the door with growing urgency. "Maya, please, open the door." Sebastian's voice sounded different, strained, almost desperate, but she couldn't move. She tried to steady her breathing, but every attempt turned into another loud, broken sob. Her face burned, her chest ached, and the humiliation pulsed through her so intensely it felt like a physical weight. "I can't," she whispered to herself. She couldn't open that door. She couldn't look at anyone. She couldn't face a room full of eyes. Eventually the knocking stopped. The silence that followed wasn't comforting, it was terrifying. Then, after a few suspended seconds, she heard Sebastian's voice through the door, low and firm. "I'll fix this." And his footsteps faded down the hallway. Maya stayed there, curled up, longer than she could count. The next morning she woke in her tiny Brooklyn apartment with the fragile hope that everything had been a nightmare. But the phone vibrating non-stop on her nightstand proved it wasn't. Messages, missed calls, emails, some curious, some cruel, some silent, waiting for her to say something. And in the middle of all of them, dozens of calls from Sebastian, calls she deleted before her eyes could even register his name. Harper arrived as soon as she heard the rumors, because yes, someone had already begun spreading them. She entered without knocking, pulled Maya into her arms, and Maya collapsed all over again. "I knew this job would be stressful," Harper murmured, stroking her hair, "but I never imagined it would be like this." "He shouldn't have let this happen," Maya cried. "I warned him, Harper. I told him it would end badly. I told him." "You didn't do anything wrong. Rebecca is a venomous snake, and if people believe her lies, they're just as rotten." But it didn't matter what Harper said. Maya could think of only one thing. It's over. The dream was over. Her reputation was over. Everything she had worked for, gone. So when she finally managed to get out of bed, she opened her laptop, typed a simple, cold, direct email, and sent it. "Dear all, I hereby submit my immediate resignation." No goodbyes, no explanations, no apologies. She blocked Sebastian's number right after. She needed to breathe. She needed to run. She needed to disappear. The next day. That afternoon, loud banging echoed at her apartment door. "Maya, open up!" His voice. She froze. Her heart beat so violently it shook her whole body, but she didn't move. "Maya," Sebastian insisted, "please, we need to talk." She pressed her lips together, feeling tears rise again. "Go away," she said, voice cracking. "I don't want to see you." "I can't leave," he answered. "Not after what happened last night. Let me in, please." "Sebastian, don't do this," she whispered, resting her forehead against the door. "You're my boss. You were my boss. We never should have—" "You're not just my assistant," he cut in. "You never were. Maya, Enough!" The word came out like a scream. "You don't understand. My reputation is destroyed. I'll never get another decent job. You get to move on. I don't." Silence. Then his voice returned, soft as a breath. I'll protect you, whatever it takes. Her eyes squeezed shut. It hurt. God, it hurt so much she wished she could disappear. I can't see you right now, Sebastian. Please, just leave. He took a few seconds before responding. If that's what you want, I'll respect it. His voice was broken, but I'm not giving up on you. His footsteps retreated. The building's front door closed. Maya slid down the door to the floor, hugging her knees. She knew he meant it, and that only made everything harder. The grey days, after the following days, blurred together into a dull, heavy fog. Depression, anxiety, fear of opening social media, fear of stepping outside. But Harper refused to let her drown. "You're getting up," she repeated every day. "You're Maya Chen. You don't quit." And one day, at last, Maya got up. She showered, tied her hair, took a breath, and opened her laptop. She updated her resume, rewrote every line carefully, and sent it to smaller, more humane companies. The next day, one replied, Walsh & Combs Consulting. They scheduled an interview. The new beginning. When Maya arrived, she found a simple, welcoming office full of people who looked genuinely human. The manager, Fernanda Walsh, had a kind smile and sharp eyes that evaluated without judging. "Your resume is excellent," Fernanda said, "and I like your posture. We value hard work here." Maya almost cried. It was exactly what she needed to hear. "I do need to be honest," Fernanda added. "The salary is much lower." "That's fine," Maya said. "I just need a chance." "Then it's yours. You start Wednesday." When Maya stepped outside, she breathed deeply for the first time in days. It was a new beginning. The Walsh & Comer office was modest. Simple desks, the smell of coffee, real people, exactly what she needed. She set up her cubicle, placed a new mug on the desk, took a breath. At 10 a.m., she heard an unusual commotion, chairs scraping, whispers, eyes drifting toward the reception area. Fernanda appeared. "Maya, someone is here asking for you." "Who?" "A man. Very well dressed. He said his name is Sebastian." The world stopped. When she reached the lobby, there he was, standing, impeccable, wearing an expression made of pain, desperation, and resolve. Employees watched the scene like it was unfolding on a movie screen. "Maya." He took one step. His voice cracked. "I needed to see you." "Sebastian, what are you doing here?" She tried to keep her voice firm. She failed. "I came to bring you back." Air disappeared from her lungs. Her whole body trembled. "This is my job. You can't—" "I tried calling. I tried finding you. You didn't give me a choice. You can't just show up here, Sebastian." "Maya," he said, cutting her off, voice low and tense. "You left me twice. I won't allow a third." Silence swallowed the room. "Now you're going to listen to me." And in that moment, she knew. Nothing would be simple from here on out. Nothing. And something was about to happen. Something far too big for her to control. The entire reception area seemed frozen in time. People stood holding folders, coffee mugs, glasses, phones, yet no one dared to move. The air felt dense, almost tangible. A blend of shock, curiosity, and embarrassment hung over the room like a thin, unsettling fog. Maya couldn't move. It felt as if her body had been pulled out of alignment, as if she were outside herself, watching her own life unfold in front of strangers' eyes. And at the center of it all stood Sebastian, breathing unevenly, his gaze locked on hers as if she were the only person in that room. "Maya." He took a step forward, and his voice, though steady, carried an invisible tremor. "Please, let me speak." Her fingers tingled, her knees weakened, her heart pounded out of rhythm. "Sebastian, you shouldn't have come here," she managed to say, though her voice sounded more like a desperate plea than a reprimand. "I had to," he replied without hesitation. "You won't talk to me, won't pick up the phone, won't open the door. I tried to respect that, I swear I did, but I can't just let you walk away like this." Her eyes filled with tears. "You're exposing me." This is my new job. You don't understand." "I do," he cut in, his voice low and threaded with pain. "I understand more than you think, and that's exactly why I'm here." The employees exchanged glances, some sympathetic, others stunned, others simply too curious to pretend indifference. Fernanda, the manager, watched with an unreadable expression. Not irritation, but concern. "Maya," Sebastian said her name again, as if drawing her soul toward him with the sound alone. "I didn't come here to expose you. I came to protect you. I came because I need you to listen." She took a deep breath, feeling her throat tighten. "Please," she whispered, "not like this. And come with me so we can talk," he pleaded, lowering his voice. 5 minutes, just 5 minutes." The silence around them felt deafening. Maya didn't know what to do. Part of her wanted to run. Another part wanted to hear every word. He saw the conflict in her eyes. He always did. "Last night," he said, his voice shaking with raw vulnerability, "I gathered everyone who was at the event. Everyone. And I told them the truth." Maya blinked. "You... what?" Her voice cracked. "I explained that Rebecca acted out of personal revenge," he continued. "I made it clear you were hired solely on merit, that any insinuation otherwise would be treated as defamation." A ripple of murmurs moved through the reception. Maya covered her mouth, as if trying to shield herself from the shock. "You did that?" Her voice was barely a whisper, almost a plea, almost disbelief. "I did," Sebastian said, "and I did more." He reached into his pocket. His hands were shaking. "This is a formal statement signed by Rebecca. She admits to twisting the facts because of jealousy and rivalry. She signed it as part of her severance agreement, in exchange for me not pressing criminal charges." The world spun around Maya. Her heart beat hard and weak at once. Her eyes blurred as she stared at him. She touched the paper gently, not convinced it was real. "Why would you do this?" The question came out broken, as if part of her feared the answer. Sebastian took her hands in his, not forcefully, not possessively, but the way someone holds something too fragile to risk losing. "Because you matter to me more than any company, any image, any contract, anything." It felt like the entire room held its breath at once. "I love you, Maya." The words came out simple, raw, without armor, without a shield. The impact hit her straight in the chest, a blow that didn't hurt. It freed. "Sebastian," but her voice failed. "I've loved you since the first night," he continued, "and every day after that only made it clearer. You're everything I never thought I'd have the courage to feel." He swallowed hard, breathing heavily. His eyes glistened. His vulnerability was unhidden, undeniable. "And I'm not losing you." She inhaled shakily, her entire body trembling. "Sebastian, nothing about us is simple. Nothing that's happened between us has been simple." "I know," he said softly, stepping closer. "And if you want distance, I'll give it. If you want time, I'll wait. But I'm not leaving without saying what I need to say." Maya opened her mouth and closed it again. The words wouldn't come. Emotion clogged her throat. He saw it, as he always did. "I'm not ashamed to be here," he said. "I'm not ashamed of what I feel. And if you want, I'll walk away from the company. Today, right now, I'll hand the presidency to my vice and start over with you anywhere." A shock passed through the room. Maya turned pale. "You can't," she whispered. "I can," he said firmly, "and I will, if that's what it takes to prove you're worth more than everything I've built." Her vision blurred. Tears turned the room into a smear of colors. Her hands shook. Her breath faltered. It was too much, too heavy, too true. Sebastian stepped even closer, but slowly, like he feared she might collapse if he moved too quickly. "Maya." He touched her face with almost reverent gentleness, as if he were touching something sacred. "I'm yours, if you want me." The words shattered something inside her, and before she could think, fear, calculate, or run, her hand rose on its own, grabbed his tie, and pulled him in. The kiss stole the breath from everyone in the room, a kiss of surrender, a kiss of acceptance, a kiss of love born after so much chaos, a kiss that said everything she couldn't speak. The employees burst into spontaneous applause, loud, emotional, unstoppable. Sebastian rested his forehead against hers, his voice low and laced with restrained laughter. "Is that a yes?" Maya's eyes shimmered with tears and relief. "That's a yes, you idiot." He smiled, a real smile, the kind only she had seen. "Maya." He cupped her face, as if terrified to lose her again. "You just made the best decision of your life." "I disagree," she whispered, laughing through tears. "The best one was going to that bar." "I disagree," he shot back. "The best was you forgetting that ridiculous note at the hotel." Maya laughed, finally free. "Shut up and kiss me again." And he did. But amid the joy, the relief, the love finally finding space to breathe, something bigger was still waiting to unfold. Something that would change everything, all over again. In the end, what remained wasn't the scandal, or the fear, or the pain that almost destroyed them. What stayed was the unexpected courage of two hearts that found each other in the middle of chaos. Maya realized that sometimes life pushes you to the edge before revealing what truly matters. And in the silence that comes after so many battles, one question lingers. How many truths of the heart are you still afraid to admit? If this story touched you, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening from? Your support is what keeps every story alive and allows more people to be moved by narratives like this one.